The punch split the air before anyone saw it coming. One moment the square was full of voices, merchants haggling, children weaving between boots, the clatter of wagon wheels on dry-packed dirt. The next, silence dropped like a curtain. A man stood over another in the dust, fist still clenched, his chest heaving. Blood dripped from his knuckles. The man on the ground didn't move. No one helped him up. They were all staring at the woman. She stood near the livery stable, her dress torn at the shoulder, dirt smeared across her cheek. Her breath came fast and shallow, her eyes dark, wide, still holding the shock of what had almost happened, locked on the man who'd thrown the punch. His name was Caleb Rourke. He wasn't a big man, wasn't known for brawling or boasting. He worked horses on the edge of town, kept to himself, paid his debts, but right now, standing in the center of the square with every eye on him, he looked like something carved from stone. The man on the ground groaned and rolled onto his side. His name was Garrett Lowe, son of the mayor, nephew to the land office clerk, cousin to half the ranchers in the valley. He spat blood into the dirt and glared up at Caleb with hatred that could have lit a barn. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," Garrett said. Caleb didn't answer. He turned to the woman and held out his hand. She hesitated, just a breath, then took it. Her fingers trembled. "Come on," he said quietly. They walked together through the square and the crowd parted like water. No one spoke, no one moved to stop them. But Caleb could feel it, the weight of 100 silent judgments pressing against his back. By the time they reached the edge of the square, whispers had already started. Her name was Alma. She didn't say much as they walked. Caleb led her down the alley behind the feed store, away from the eyes and the murmurs. When they stopped in the shade of a cottonwood, she finally looked at him. "You shouldn't have done that." "I know." "They'll come for you." "I know." She shook her head slowly, her eyes glistening. "You don't know who you just hit." "I know exactly who I hit." Alma's jaw tightened. She pulled her torn sleeve back over her shoulder, but it wouldn't stay. "He was drunk. I was just trying to get past him. He grabbed me." Her voice cracked. She stopped, swallowed hard. "He said no one would believe me. He said I wasn't worth the breath it'd take to tell." Caleb's knuckles throbbed. He flexed his hand and felt the sting where the skin had split. He was wrong. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face like she was trying to find some hidden reason, some angle he was working. But there wasn't one. He'd just done what felt right. "Why?" she asked. "Because someone had to." Alma blinked, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, like she was ashamed of it. "You're going to lose everything." "Maybe. You will." Caleb didn't argue. He knew how towns like this worked. Garrett Lowe could do what he wanted. His family owned half the valley. They decided who got loans, who got land, who got buried when things went bad. And now Caleb had put his fist through the face of their golden boy in front of everyone. There was no walking that back. "Where will you go?" Alma asked. "Nowhere. This is my home." "Not anymore, it isn't." Caleb looked past her toward the square. He could still hear the faint hum of voices, the slow return of life to the town. But it felt different now, poisoned. "I'll manage," he said. Alma studied him, her expression somewhere between disbelief and something softer. "You're a fool." "Probably." She almost smiled. almost. Then she turned and started walking, her steps quick and uneven. Caleb watched her go, her shadow stretching long across the dirt. She didn't look back. By the time the sun set, the whole town knew what had happened. Caleb sat on the porch of his small cabin, a mile out from the center of town, and listened to the wind move through the grass. His hand was wrapped in cloth. His jaw still ached from where Garrett had clipped him before he went down. But it wasn't the pain that bothered him. It was the silence. No one had come by, not to check on him, not to ask his side, not even to warn him. That was how it started. Inside, his dog, a scarred mutt named Rust, lay by the stove, ears twitching at every sound. Caleb poured himself a cup of coffee and sat back down. The sky was bruising purple, and the first stars were starting to show. He thought about Alma, the way her voice had broken when she said no one would believe me, the way she'd looked at him afterward, like he was either the bravest man she'd ever met or the dumbest. Maybe both. The sound of hoofbeats pulled him from his thoughts. Caleb set down his cup and stood slowly. The rider came up the trail at an easy pace, no hurry, no aggression. When he got close enough, Caleb recognized him. Martin Cray, the town's deputy. A decent man as far as Caleb knew, quiet, fair. Martin dismounted and walked up to the porch, his hat in his hands. Caleb. Martin, I need to talk to you. Caleb nodded. Figured you would. Martin glanced at the cabin, then back at Caleb. Garrett's pressing charges, says you attacked him without cause, says you're dangerous. And what do you say? Martin hesitated. I say I wasn't there. But I heard what people saw. Then you know he's lying. Maybe. But it doesn't matter what I know. His father's already talking to the judge. They want you arrested. Caleb felt something cold settle in his chest. When? Tomorrow morning. Maybe sooner. The wind picked up, rattling the loose boards on the porch. Rust growled low from inside. You telling me to run? Caleb asked. Martin looked him in the eye. I'm telling you to be ready. He turned and walked back to his horse. Before he mounted, he paused. For what it's worth, Martin said quietly. I think you did the right thing. Then he rode off into the dark. Caleb stood on the porch long after the sound of hooves faded. The stars were out now, cold and clear. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. He thought about running, about saddling his horse and disappearing into the hills before anyone could stop him. But he didn't move, because if he ran now, Garrett Lowe would win. And Alma's words, no one would believe me, would be true forever. Caleb Rourke wasn't going anywhere. The knock came just after dawn. Caleb was already awake. He'd barely slept. When he opened the door, he found Martin standing there again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him were two men, one older, grey-bearded, wearing a marshal's star. The other younger, wiry, with a rifle slung over his shoulder. Caleb Rourke, the marshal said, you're under arrest for assault. Caleb didn't resist. He let them bind his wrists and lead him to the wagon. Rust barked from inside the cabin, but Caleb didn't look back. The ride into town was silent. When they reached the square, a crowd had already gathered. Women whispered behind their hands. Men crossed their arms and watched with hard eyes. Garrett Lowe stood near the front, his face bruised purple, his jaw swollen. He smiled when he saw Caleb. They took him to the jailhouse, a squat stone building at the edge of the square. The cell was small, cold, smelling of rust and old sweat. The marshal locked the door and left without a word. Caleb sat on the thin cot and stared at the wall. Hours passed. The light through the barred window shifted. No one came. Then, late in the afternoon, the door to the jailhouse creaked open. Caleb looked up. It was Alma. She stood in the doorway, holding a basket covered with cloth. Martin was behind her, arms crossed, watching. "You've got 10 minutes, Martin said. Alma walked to the cell. She didn't look at him at first, just set the basket down and stared at the floor. "I brought you food," she said quietly. "You didn't have to." "I know." She finally looked up, and Caleb saw the exhaustion in her face, the weight of whatever she'd been carrying since yesterday. "They're saying terrible things about you," she said. "They're saying you attacked him for no reason, that you're violent, that you always had a temper." "And what are you saying?" Alma's jaw tightened. "I'm saying they're liars." Caleb leaned forward. "Then tell them." "I did." "And?" She looked away. "And no one listened?" Silence filled the space between them. Outside, the town went on. Voices, footsteps, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer. But in here, it was just the two of them and the weight of what had happened. "I went to the judge," Alma said. "I told him what Garrett did. I told him you were defending me." "What did he say?" She swallowed hard. "He said I must have misunderstood, that Garrett wouldn't do such a thing, that maybe I'd had too much sun." Her voice cracked. "He didn't even look at me." Caleb's hands curled into fists. "And Garrett?" "He's walking free, smiling, acting like he's the victim." "Of course he is." Alma's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "This is my fault." "No, it is. If I hadn't—" "Stop." Caleb stood and walked to the bars. "You didn't do anything wrong. He did." "And I'd do it again." She stared at him, disbelief flickering across her face. "Why? Why would you throw your life away for someone you barely know?" "Because it's not about knowing you. It's about doing what's right." Alma shook her head. "There's no such thing as right in this town. There's only who has power and who doesn't." "Then maybe it's time that changed." She laughed, bitter, broken. "You think one man can change a whole town?" "I think one man can try." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Alma reached through the bars and took his hand. Her fingers were cold. "They're going to hang you," she whispered. "Garrett's father is pushing for it. He's telling everyone you're dangerous, that you're a threat." Caleb felt the weight of her words settle over him like a shroud. "Then let them," he said quietly. "No." Her grip tightened. "You don't get to give up." "I'm not giving up. I'm standing my ground." Alma's breath hitched. She pulled her hand back and wiped her eyes. "I won't let you die for me." "You don't have a choice." "Yes, I do." Before Caleb could respond, Martin appeared at the door. "Time's up." Alma picked up the basket and turned to leave, but at the door she stopped and looked back. "I'm going to fix this," she said. "Alma, I will." Then she was gone. That night, Caleb lay on the cot and listened to the sounds of the town settling into sleep. Somewhere in the dark, a dog barked, a door slammed, a man laughed too loud. He thought about what Alma had said, about power, about right and wrong, and he thought about Garrett Lowe walking free while he rotted in a cell. The anger came slow, but it came. Then, just before midnight, he heard voices. Low, urgent. Outside the jailhouse. Caleb sat up and moved to the window. Through the bars he could see shadows moving in the square, 6, maybe 7 men. They carried torches. Their faces were hidden, but he knew who they were. He knew why they were here. The door to the jailhouse rattled. Martin's voice cut through the dark, sharp and firm. "Step back, now." "We just want to talk to him," someone said. Caleb recognized the voice, Garrett's father. "Not tonight, you don't." "You work for us, deputy, don't forget that." "I work for the law, and the law says he gets a trial." Silence. Then the sound of boots on dirt, retreating, but slow, reluctant. Martin stayed at the door until they were gone. Caleb sat back down, his heart pounding. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. The trial was set for noon. They came for him that morning. Martin and the marshal, flanked by 2 armed men Caleb didn't recognize. Hired guns, probably. Brought in to make sure things went smoothly. The courtroom was packed. Every seat taken. People stood along the walls, craning their necks to see. Caleb was led to a chair at the front, his wrists still bound. Across from him sat Garrett Lowe, clean-shaven, dressed in a pressed suit. He looked like a choir boy. The judge, a heavy man with a grey moustache and eyes like chips of flint, sat behind the bench and banged his gavel. "Order!" The room quieted. "We're here to determine the guilt or innocence of Caleb Rourke in the matter of assault against Garrett Lowe. Mr. Lowe, you may speak." Garrett stood. He didn't look at Caleb. He looked at the crowd. "Your Honor, I was minding my own business when this man attacked me without warning. I don't know what I did to deserve it. I've never had trouble with him before. But he hit me, hard, and in front of the whole town. I could have died." Murmurs rippled through the room. The judge nodded. "Mr. Rourke, do you have anything to say?" Caleb stood slowly. His voice was steady. "I hit him because he was hurting a woman. He grabbed her, tore her dress. She tried to get away, and he wouldn't let her. So I stopped him." Garrett's face flushed red.
"That's a lie." "It's the truth." The judge looked around the room. "Is there anyone here who can corroborate Mr. Rourke's account?" Silence. Caleb's chest tightened. He scanned the crowd. There had been dozens of people in the square that day, dozens who saw what happened. But no one moved, no one spoke. Then from the back of the room, a voice broke the silence. "I saw it." Heads turned. Caleb's breath caught. It was Alma. She stood in the doorway, her dress plain, her face pale but determined. Every eye in the room locked on her. "I saw what happened," she said again, louder this time. Garrett's father shot to his feet. "This woman has no place here." "She's a witness," Martin said from the side. "She has every right." The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Speak." Alma walked forward. She didn't look at Garrett. She looked at Caleb. "Garrett Lowe grabbed me in the square. I told him to stop. He didn't. He tore my dress and said no one would believe me if I told." That's when Caleb stepped in. He didn't attack him. He defended me. Garrett stood, his voice sharp. "She's lying." "I'm not." "You're trying to save him because you—" "Because I what?" Alma's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Because I told the truth? Because I refused to let you get away with it?" The room erupted. Voices overlapped, angry and confused. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" But the damage was done. Garrett's father leaned over and whispered something to the judge. The judge's expression hardened. "Miss Alma," he said slowly, "do you have any proof of your claims?" "Proof? Witnesses? Evidence? Anything beyond your word?" Alma's jaw tightened. "My word should be enough. In a court of law it is not." Silence fell again. Caleb saw the defeat creeping into Alma's face. She'd risked everything to stand up, and it still wasn't enough. Then, from the back of the room, another voice spoke. I saw it too. An older woman stepped forward. Caleb recognized her, Mrs. Brennan, the seamstress. She was small, grey-haired, hands folded in front of her. I was near the livery, she said quietly. I saw what that boy did, and I saw Mr. Rourke stop him. Garrett's father stood again. You're mistaken. I'm not. Another voice joined. Then another. One by one, people began to stand.
Not many, just a handful, but enough. Enough to matter. The judge looked around the room, his face unreadable. Then he banged his gavel one last time. This court will recess. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. They led Caleb back to his cell. Alma followed. I told you I'd fix it, she said. Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in days he felt something close to hope. You might have just saved my life. Maybe, or maybe we both did. The hour stretched like a lifetime. Caleb sat in the cell, staring at the wall, listening to the hum of voices outside. Alma stayed with him. She didn't say much, just sat on the floor outside the bars, her back against the stone. Why did you do it? Caleb asked finally. Do what? Stand up in front of everyone. You could have stayed quiet. Alma looked at him. So could you. That's different. How? Caleb didn't have an answer. Alma pulled her knees to her chest. My whole life, people have told me to keep my head down, to be quiet, to let men like Garrett do whatever they want, because fighting back only makes it worse. She paused. But then you hit him. And for the first time I thought, maybe it doesn't have to be this way. Caleb leaned forward. It doesn't. How do you know? Because we're still here. Alma smiled, small, fragile, but real. Then the door opened. Martin stepped inside. Judge is ready. They led Caleb back into the courtroom. The crowd was smaller this time, quieter. Garrett sat stone-faced. His father whispered urgently to the judge. The judge banged his gavel. After reviewing the testimony, this court has reached a decision. Caleb's heart pounded. The charges against Caleb Rourke are dismissed. The room exploded. Garrett shot to his feet, shouting. His father slammed his fist on the table, but the judge's decision was final. Furthermore, the judge continued, Mr. Lowe is hereby warned that any further incidents will result in charges being brought against him. Garrett's face went white with rage, but he said nothing. Martin unlocked Caleb's wrists. You're free to go. Caleb stood slowly, still not quite believing it. He looked at Alma. She was crying. Thank you, he said. She shook her head. Thank you. The town didn't change overnight, but something shifted. Garrett Lowe left a week later, sent by his father to oversee property in another county. Some said it was to save face. Others said it was to keep him from causing more trouble. Caleb went back to his cabin, back to his horses, back to the quiet life he'd built. But Alma came by sometimes. She'd bring food, help with the chores, sit on the porch and talk until the stars came out. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, she asked him a question. Do you regret it? Caleb thought for a long moment. No. Not even a little? Not even a little. Alma smiled. Good. Because neither do I. Years later, people would still talk about the day Caleb Rourke stood up to Garrett Lowe. Some called him a hero, others called him a fool. But Alma called him something else. She called him a friend. And that, Caleb thought, was more than enough. The sun set. The wind blew. And for the first time in a long time, the world felt a little more right.